Well, hello everybody. I have a real short video here about just a handful of topics that have not yet been covered, but I definitely want you to know them. Dealing with really two issues that we haven't discussed yet. One is uh, sleep and how it changes throughout our lives, and then how we typically respond if we don't get enough sleep, better known as sleep deprivation. So let's go ahead and get started here. First of all, the first thing I want to talk about is what's called sleep and how it changes as we age. Simply put, if you take a close look at this chart here, all right, what this chart basically shows along the bottom is the different age groups, okay, starting at really the point of birth, day 1 to day 15, and then it looks at things such as 3 to 5 months. Then it gets into the first handful of years, 2 to 3 years, and 3 to 5 years, and 5 to 9 years. And eventually it jumps up to as much as 19 to 30 years, 33 to 45, 50, and all the way up to 90. That's on the x-axis. There on the y-axis, or the vertical axis, you'll notice the total daily sleep in hours, all right? How much of your day you typically got going and so on. So to understand this chart, if you start right at the very beginning where it says day 1 through day 15, it turns around and shows you the percentage of total sleep spent in REM. And if you take a look at that, you will see that the total amount of sleep, okay, uh, from the bottom is non-REM, and in the lighter gray is REM, and then the top area is awake. You'll notice that in the first 2 weeks, for as an example, infants tend to sleep an awful lot. They'll sleep upwards of 16 hours a day, okay, 16 hours a day. Now, infants don't sleep, especially newborns, sleep continuously during this time. They tend to turn around and sleep and then wake up, and then sleep and wake up, and they eat and then, fall back to sleep, and things of that sort. If you understand the breakdown of what you're looking at, approximately 8 hours of their sleep is REM, and approximately 8 hours of their sleep is non-REM. Okay, the non-REM area is below, the REM area is in the light gray, and that which is above the light gray is in the waking period. So what I'm saying there is that approximately 50% of their sleep is REM, rapid eye movements. That's the time that you dream. So why is this so important? One thing you need to know is this. When infants are born and come into this world, their brain is not done developing. There are still neural pathways being created in the brain of a newborn, and actually in an infant and a toddler and a child for quite some time. All right. And a lot of that branching out of the neural pathways happens while they sleep, and more particularly happens during REM sleep. So you see there in the early part, they do get a tremendous amount of REM sleep. They really, truly do in that regard. And that's not a bad thing by any means, but that is the time that the neural pathways are developed in the brain, and they tend to develop and so on. Now, as you look at it, 3 to 5 months, you see that they probably sleep about 14 hours a day, and about 40% of their overall sleep is REM. You get to 3 to 5 years, and you'll see that they tend to sleep about 12 hours a day. A lot of kids, hopefully sleep overnight and then may take a 2 to 3 hour nap sometime during the day and things like that. And so you see that approximately 20 to 25% of their sleep is REM. What is happening is as kids get older, as people get older, they require less sleep. And as they get older, less and less of their sleep is REM. All right, less and less of their sleep is REM, so that as they even get up to later years, they don't require as much REM sleep. But REM is very, very important in the early time. That's why newborns and infants and later toddlers, they need their sleep. A lot of the brain develops during that time. And as you see there, as their sleep tends to go down and they're awake more and more, the amount of REM drops off. That 20% is not that atypical, okay? And going from 50% to 20% in the first 5 years of life is not that surprising, because that's when a lot of the brain development is really truly going on, the neural pathways and so on. So kids are very much needing their sleep. Now, if you look at the chart at the far end, when you start to get to 35 to 45, 33 to 45 years and 50 years, all the way up to 90 years, you'll notice that overall, people get less sleep as they age. They get less sleep. A lot of people think, well, don't senior citizens need more sleep? The truth of the matter is that a lot of times their bodies don't. And people may see individuals who are in their 50s and 60s and 70s and may say, yo, there they are taking naps. What a lot of times people don't realize is that a lot of people, as they get up there in years, don't sleep well at night. They suffer from a lot more insomnia. Ask your grandparents that question sometime if the opportunity presents itself. Can I ask, do you sleep well at night? Do you find yourself waking up unable to fall back to sleep? I hope your parents or your grandparents say, no, I do just fine. But some turn around and say, no, I do wake up occasionally and I can't fall back to sleep and that kind of stuff. So the need for sleep actually decreases as we age. It doesn't necessarily increase in that regard. And even less of their sleep is REM. Okay. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is sleep deprivation. And sleep deprivation is just that. It basically is depriving oneself of sleep for one reason or another. Sometimes we're sleep deprived because we're playing a lot of video games. Sometimes we're sleep deprived because we're working a job or two jobs and stuff like that. One of the most fascinating times I ever saw someone find themselves in a sleep deprived state was when they were actually trying to win a car. And I'll give you a quick backstory on this of how this happened. A local radio station many, many years ago was giving away an automobile. Okay, it was a brand new car. And what you had to do was, first of all, get your name called over the radio and call in 5 minutes or 10 minutes to be entered. And once they got, oh gosh, about 30 people involved in this competition, they showed up on a predetermined day and they were told the rules of how to win this car. You had to put your hand on the car and be the last person with your hand on the car. Okay, if you're the last person with your hand on the car, you're the winner. Now, you suddenly had 30 people thinking this is going to be a walk in the park. I'm going to win this car, no doubt. But one of the rules was that you had to remain standing at all times. You had to remain standing and you could not lean against the car. So you had to hold up your own weight. All right. And in so doing, they would let you, in this competition, they would let you turn around and take a rest for 5 minutes every hour and a 15-minute rest every 6 hours. And what people didn't realize, or were quick to realize rather, was that this was a contest in sleep deprivation. I mean, you were about to go a long, long time without much sleep at all. Okay. And in reality, the competition, they did this a couple of years. The competition would start on a Wednesday with 30 eager participants. And a lot of times they wouldn't fall off to sleep or finally get done with the competition till either Saturday or Sunday, 4 or 5 days later, without sleep. Okay. One of the things that happens to people when they suffer, as happened in this competition, is that people turn around and they suffer from what is called microsleep. Microsleep are sudden bursts of sleep that actually lead you right into REM sleep, no less. It's sort of amazing how that happens. People that go 24 hours or 48 hours or longer without sleep, that have a microsleep reaction, tend to fall off to sleep rather quickly. And according to science, the brain starts to almost, not instantly, but very quickly get into REM, which usually doesn't come on that fast unless you're sleep deprived. For what it's worth, in this particular competition, by the third night, there was a lot of tired people, all right? And what would happen is that someone would be so tired, and it'd be 2 in the morning, they haven't sat down or anything except on breaks, that they would literally fall off to sleep with their hand on the car. The major muscle groups would go limp, and sometimes they fell to the ground. They slowly fell to the ground. And when they did, their hand was no longer on the vehicle. And the judge, he or she would say, "You're out." And you're out of the competition. And people, accused others of doing things and so on, but they'd suffered from microsleep. All right. The longer you go without sleep, the more frequent these microsleep attacks. And the best way to describe a microsleep attack without talking about winning a car is this. If you've ever been driving down the road very late at night, midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and you're tired, and you find yourself driving along and you think to yourself about what happened earlier in the day and how you'd like to have done that different, and suddenly you hear that sound of your tire when it gets too close to the shoulder, all right, and it wakes you up and you suddenly realize, by God, I was falling off to sleep. If it's been a while, that can be an act of microsleep. That is pretty much the same thing. You're falling into REM rather quickly. Another thing that we see with people who are sleep deprived is what is called a REM rebound. A REM rebound simply means that if you are deprived of sleep and your body needs to catch up on its REM, when people finally do get a chance to go off to sleep, science has found that they enter REM much more quickly. And the longer they've been without sleep, the faster they can enter REM and go into that and stay in there much longer than their normal 20 or 25%, depending upon their age. They may spend, 30, 40, 50 or more percent of their total sleep time catching up with the REM because that's what the body ultimately needs. It's called a REM rebound, and it really is associated with the sleep deprivation. The greater the deprivation, the more the rebound in that regard. Now, does sleep deprivation tend to, cause a person to die? No. Does it cause them to go insane? No, not really. There have been cases of people that have competed in such things, and after 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days, they start to hallucinate mildly, hearing things that aren't there and swearing they saw something that isn't there. That has been documented. But the idea of going insane, that's most of the legends and made up stories. The biggest thing that can happen to long-term sleep deprivation, where you don't get the adequate number of hours of sleep and stuff like that because of job and life, is that your immune system tends to break down. Your immune system, that part of your body that keeps you from getting sick, from coming down with the cold, the flu, or anything else that's out there, tends not to be as strong because the body does not have that regenerative time of sleep to make all things better. And so if you're sleep deprived, your immune system can be run down, and because of that, people can pay a hefty price in terms of their health. Some have argued that long-term sleep deprivation, where a person for many, many years only averages 2 or 3 or 4 hours of sleep and stuff like that, who gets sick a lot, could shorten their life. I can understand that, but we're not talking someone in a car competition that they're not going to suddenly drop dead because of this. But, a life that is so very, very busy, yeah, that could probably play havoc on your immune system, and who knows what it could do in the long run. Okay, folks, that's enough for now. That's all I've got. Take care.